Good morning. Today we're going to continue on with the second industrial revolution. We're in module two, lesson 2.3, impact on American society. So we're going to explore the second industrial revolution and how it reshaped American society. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to examine how technological growth and urbanization transformed daily life, analyze key inventions and their impact, and draw connections between historical and modern society. So let's ask the essential question for this lesson, and that is, how do technological advances change the way people live? So be thinking about that throughout the lesson. How does technology and advancements in technology change the way that we live? Okay, so before we dive in, let's reflect on the short video that you all watched from Module 2, which highlighted the key inventions of the second industrial revolution, such as the railroads, the electric light, the telephone, and steel production. Be thinking about that video. Hopefully you've watched it. Okay, now about that video, which invention do you think had the biggest impact and why? And feel free to share your thoughts on that in the chat. Outstanding. Now let's break down these inventions and examine how they transformed American society. So, an overview of all the events leading up to these changes, which was the Second Industrial Revolution, which took place from the late 19th century to the early 20th century, was a period of rapid industrial and technological advancements. And unlike the first Industrial Revolution, which was driven by steam and textiles, this revolution focused on steel, electricity, and communication technologies. So these innovations not only changed industry, but also reshaped society completely and in very profound ways. Some of the key inventions and their impacts along the way were the railroads, steel production, electricity, communication, both the telegraph and telephone. And so we'll break those down now. So going back to railroads, the cause of the railroads was there was needed expansion, and railroads allowed for faster transportation across the country. So as we were going with Manifest Destiny, and people were moving further out west. They were further away from goods and services. The railroad made it possible for people to live farther away from the East Coast and still get all the goods and services that they were used to having on the East Coast. So as the railroad moved, so were towns built along the way until eventually the country was completely connected. This increased migration to cities for job opportunities. As those cities grew up on the railroad routes, there was needs for more blacksmiths and you name it. If there was a job to be found, people were traveling in order to find those jobs and traveling with the railroad. So the railroad stretching out literally helped build cities along the way. It expanded those markets for goods and services. So now people could start manufacturing goods and service away from the East Coast as it went as well. So more warehouses and industry started popping up in other parts of the country as long as it was near the railroad where it could be put on a railway and sent west and or back east. Then everything was wide open there. Okay. It also standardized time zones to improve scheduling. So one of the benefits of time zones during this particular time was that um, no one had to wait around and wonder when the trains were coming in, when the supplies were coming in. This made everything okay. If it's this time on the East Coast, then it's this time here, and now everything's running on all cylinders. The railroads, you had to think this is before cars were widespread. This is before air travel was widespread. The railroads were super important, and it's not so much the case now, but whereas at one time cities would be built near a major waterway, such as a river, so that boats could carry goods and services up and down the river, now the railroad expanded that. You didn't necessarily have to have a river or a major body of water in order to build a town now because the railroads could connect town to town. So it was a huge deal at the time. The long-term impact was it laid the foundation for modern transportation networks. We still kind of use the basics of the railroad, how it started connecting towns and cities and making the country bigger. Um, we had the interstate system. Once cars were a regular thing, we had the interstate system, and now if you look at it, it's all kind of built the same way as far as how to get from point A to point B. And it enabled nationwide trade and commerce, which made a lot of people very wealthy. It made the country as a whole very wealthy. The advent of the international railroad system expanded the country and grew the country to great heights at the time. Along with that come the steel production, thanks to the Bessemer process. The Bessemer process revolutionized steel production and made it cheaper and more efficient to manufacture steel. You obviously have to have steel to build a railroad, so the two kind of go hand in hand there. The immediate effects of this again were then it enabled construction of railroads, but also bridges and skyscrapers, provided job opportunities for industrial centers, and transformed urban infrastructure. So cities were able to start building up instead of spreading out, thanks to the skyscrapers. And someone had to build that. So now you have more jobs available for people. The long term impact is if you go to any city anywhere in the country now, you're going to see a modern city skyline, and all of that's relying on steel. It would not be possible. You can't build a skyscraper that's going to hold up for very long with just wood, which is what most people used at the time before steel production. So, and then advanced global construction and engineering, some of the wonders of the world, man-made wonders of the world, such as the Golden Gate Bridge and things of that nature, would have never been possible without steel. And then, of course, there's electricity. Thomas Edison's light bulb. Interesting fact, Thomas Edison tried to develop the light bulb 1,000 times and failed every time. It was his 1,001 time that he actually succeeded. So there's something in there about not giving up on something just because it doesn't work out the first time or the first 1,000 times for that matter. The immediate effects of having electric power for homes and businesses obviously is extending work hours and increased productivity. So if you were living specifically in the wintertime where it seems to get dark super early, back in the day, those people had to shut down. They were done. And now factories can remain open 24 hours and have shifts coming in because they always have a way to see thanks to light and electricity. It introduced urban nightlife. So all the blues clubs and things of that nature and restaurants that stay open past dark, all of that is because of electricity. And then it made household appliances more accessible. People started having refrigerators and stoves and lights. So electricity is could never be overrated. It could only be underrated. The long-term impact is just that it's an everyday fundamental part of modern life now. If you've ever lost power during a snowstorm or something like that, after a couple of days it gets pretty hardcore for people that have to go without electricity for a couple of days. But it's hard to believe that just a little over 100 years ago, no one had electricity, but now we almost take it for granted. And then it paved the way for digital technology. As I'm speaking to you on Zoom right now, and we're meeting digitally, there's no way that could have happened without electricity. Communication. Communication was another one that got a big bump during the Second Industrial Revolution, namely the telegraph and the telephone, thanks to Alexander Graham Bell. This new communication technology allowed messages to be sent quickly over long distances. Um, Now we have computers in our pockets and we can call people every day. So it's come a long way. But at the time, the thought of being able to speak to someone across the country via telephone or a telegraph, which was basically a Morse code that you would tap and someone on the other end could hear it and write it out as you were speaking it, was considered like a miracle at the time. The immediate effects were businesses could operate more efficiently. Families could stay connected despite geographic separation. You could let someone know you made it somewhere safely and rather than them have to worry and wait on a written letter that may arrive months later that you were okay. Governments could respond to issues faster. We turn on the news now and we see like the fires out in California, for example. Everyone knew about it immediately. If you have a television, you probably or internet, you knew about it. Think about before the telegraph or the telephone, there could have been fires raging in California for months before someone in Washington, D.C. even knew about it. So that's amazing in and of itself. The long-term impact there is evolution of communication technologies like the smartphones and internet. You have to crawl before you can walk. You have to walk before you can run. The telegraph and telephone were crawling. Then the landline telephone that your parents probably hadn't growing up in their house. That's the walking, and now we're sprinting with the smartphones. But you have to start somewhere. And then instant global connectivity. Um, People were satisfied when this first happened, when the second industrial revolution first got started and they had the telephone. It was a very satisfying feeling to know that you could speak to a relative um, across the country. And now we can play video games with our friends that we made in Indonesia. It's just amazing. So the lifestyle and urbanization changes that happened due to all these technological advances came obviously the growth of cities, factories, and industries that created job opportunities that drew more people in from rural areas into urban centers. So that's where we started having our first, say, cities and then super cities. This rapid urbanization did lead to some challenges, such as overcrowded housing, poor sanitation and public issues, and a shift towards a consumer culture as goods became more accessible and affordable. I would argue we still kind of live in the consumer culture as evidenced by people standing in line for hours to get the new iPhone, no matter what the weather is outside, or the new PS5 or whatever it is. But the overcrowded tenement housing and the poor sanitation was really a major problem at the time. Everything seemed to happen so fast that all of a sudden people that weren't quite sanitary minded as what we are today were all living on top of each other, which means something like a COVID or a flu or anything, any kind of outbreak like that would have just ran like wildfire because everyone pretty much lived on top of each other. So there were problems with instant urbanization, if you will. Um, so what we want to do now, I'm going to put you in the breakout rooms. We're going to break into small groups, and each group will take one of the following inventions. So this is what you're going to do. The inventions that you'll choose from are railroads, steel production, electricity, and communication. So group one, you will have railroads. Group two, you will have steel production. Group three, you will have electricity. Group four, you will have communication, that is the telegraph and telephone. Your task, your assignment is in your group to identify its technological cause, analyze its immediate effects on society, and you can use Google if you'd like, and examine its long-term impact on modern life. Okay. So once we come back from that, I'll bring you back in 10 minutes and I'll be going from group to group to see how you're doing and answer questions if you have them. Once we come back from that, we'll have a discussion at the end if there's time. So, but before we do that, as we've seen, the second industrial revolution dramatically reshaped American society, laid the foundation for modern technological advances from transportation and communication to infrastructure and energy. These innovations continue to influence our daily lives. So let's reflect on the final question. Which invention do you think had the most lasting impact on society and why? Please share your thoughts in the chat or discuss in the group. And in the course on a discussion post, I'll be asking you to write a short paragraph connecting an invention from the second industrial revolution to its modern equivalent. For example, how does the telegraph compare to today's smartphones? Um, Make sure to complete the lesson, submit your assignment, and click the next button to continue with the lesson. Great job today, and I'll see you in the next session.